Hey guys, Eric and Kim here to give our non-spoiler review of Morbius. I don't know if long awaited is the right term, but long delayed is certainly the right term. Yeah, this movie, the first trailer was January 2020. It was supposed to open, I think, that summer. It has been a lot of pushing since then. I think the weirdest thing, Kim, watching this movie that I remembered was this movie was finished. They filmed it and it was supposed to come out before Venom, Let There Be Carnage, and Spider-Man No Way Home. So a lot changed.
Oh, I'm getting so confused now over what was meant to come out when, and obviously, things have had to change in this film a little bit. But
Yeah. I want to see like an infographic of all of that. But yes, Morbius, directed by Daniel Espinosa, written by Matt Sazama and Burke Sharpless. What a cool name is Burke Sharpless. Starring Jared Leto. And the basic premise is there in the trailer that based on the Marvel comic, that this is a character, Dr. Michael Morbius, who has a rare genetic blood disease, and grown up his whole life trying to conquer that, became a doctor and a scientist, and now he thinks he has the cure, that it involves using vampire bats and sort of genetic splicing and testing, and it ends up turning him into what the comics refer to as a living vampire. He's not bitten by a vampire. He does this to himself with science, but it basically makes him like a vampire. He's got the increased strength, but he has the need for blood, the thirst for blood. So that's our setup for Morbius. Kim, what did you think? Morbius?
Okay, so there has been a lot of cynicism around this film. I'm going to start by saying before it was even released, and whether that's fair or unfair, I'll let you decide, everyone watching.
And then it didn't help that we saw the trailer 100 times for the past 2 years.
I know. But everybody loves a vampire. I do as well. In this case, a living vampire. And I was keen to see this story, and I went in hopeful because I don't want it to fail. Mm-hmm. But I found it mostly met the expectations of everyone around me. And I have to say that I can't say I was disappointed, but my hopes were dashed a little bit. It feels passionless. I think I felt like it was kind of a by numbers, kind of early 2000s kind of comic book movie, like as if the past 15 years or so hadn't happened, and Marvel and the MCU hadn't raised the bar, right. And Christopher Nolan, or even Zack Snyder come to that. Sometimes films like this are criticized for not being pacey enough, but this was actually rushing through its story to its detriment. That had an impact on how I felt about the characters. I didn't really feel like I cared about them that much or felt invested in them. And I felt like it could have lent more into the horror. This trailer, this bit in particular, certainly felt like it was going to. So I was left a little bit disappointed with that.
Yeah, I'm pretty similar as far as none of the trailers were, making me psyched for it, but I was, I always want to like a movie like this. So it was like, maybe we'll see. But to me, it's kind of just one of those whatever movies, which is to say it's not hateable. It wasn't like mad watching it, but it's just kind of sitting there. And I completely agree with you about it. It feels like it's just kind of racing through. Things are happening, but we're not spending enough time with them to really have any impact. I think that's especially true in the final act, where something, it's just like things happen, but it feels like we're skipping over a lot of beats that we should be really focusing on, or, really could embellish to great effect. It's just kind of there. And the horror thing, I very much agree with you. We've seen those clips in the trailers of, there's the sort of the cargo ship, and the first time that he kind of Morbius is out, and there are some cool visuals, like I think kind of like the Morbius effect, wherever you want to call it, of like these sort of like swirls around him and how he's moving. They're fun, but you could also feel like, I definitely felt the fact that this is a PG-13 movie that was trying to feel a little edgier, but they couldn't find a way to do it, because there's some shaky cam in that part where I'm like, oh, this is where we'd see like gore, but you don't even have to have gore to make that work. I just felt like the way they did it lost the impact, Just
Yeah,
kind
well,
of
I quite like that sequence on the ship. Actually, it reminded me of a bit of a light version of Aliens.
right, right.
And I was happy with that. It was one of my favorite parts of the film, I think. But yeah, not a lot of the rest of the action really kind of impacted on me.
Yeah, there's like, yeah, like I said, I like in kind of in their on their own as like a freeze frame, like, oh, that's kind of a fun visual of there was one shot I remember really liking where it's kind of him running up the sort of curved hallway, like a subway tunnel, and it kind of
Yes.
follows him. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool, that
Mm,
visually what they're doing there. But yeah,
mm,
most of the other action stuff is
mm.
kind of ho hum, and because it is ho hum, and they're not really after that opening sequence, they never really go back to horror stuff except for one other sequence with a hospital with a nurse.
Mhm.
But it's not that impactful, it just kind of
Yeah, yeah, and it kind of feels like you've seen that sort of thing before as well. I mean, that sounds maybe silly to say after having compared that previous scene to Aliens, but and having enjoyed that, um, but yeah, it does suffer as a result. One thing I liked was in terms of effects was this the effect created by all the bats. That when we were in those sequences, um it was pounding. I don't know about the cinema you were in, but the sound was so loud, and there was all this flapping and pounding, and it did feel quite overwhelming. So it was, that it was quite a physical reaction I had to those parts, but they also used it later to kind of obscure the action, which was disappointing.
Yeah, I know. I think I had a similar experience because I saw it in an IMAX theater, and
Mm.
the sound was definitely cranked up. But yeah, when the bats are flying all around, it worked pretty well. There are definitely some silly things throughout this movie. Um, just some moments where you're just like, okay. One thing that made me laugh throughout the movie is it's a movie with a lot of like just random a holes, whether they be a group of little kids or a group of hired thugs that you think would be more professional, or a, a security guard for a rich guy who's a real. I'm just like, why are all these people just such jerks?
Yeah, there was no reason for it, was there? It was just,
I mean, I know
oh,
why although at least in one case I just mentioned, there is not a payoff, which I think speaks to the fact that and I went back and I watched the trailers to this. There were 3 different big trailers, and there's definitely some stuff cut. And we knew there were some reshoots and things changed. And you just, yeah, I think you really feel it in that third act, though, that there's stuff like Tyrese's character. There's these 2 FBI agents. Tyrese plays one of them throughout the movie, but kind of just vanished by the end, and it felt like was supposed to maybe have something more.
yeah, I also felt while watching it that characters like the police and Milo would make sudden assumptions that happen to be true, and it's like, how do you leap to that realization? You're correct, but
Right?
yeah, how where's that come from?
Yeah. Also, I will say it felt like they were very loosey goosey with his powers. It's
Yeah.
like they're very sort of convenient, like especially his kind of bat radar. It was
Mm.
like sometimes it gives him super hearing, sometimes it's like an exact sonar to where he's going. It just felt like it was a little bit whatever they needed it to be.
Yeah, he was also sometimes super sensitive to human blood, and at other times not at all, it seemed.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that
Well,
was a
yeah.
little bit inconsistent.
Yeah, I didn't figure out those rules exactly. You mentioned Milo, so we should talk a little bit about the supporting cast. Mentioned Tyrese, but you've got Adria Arjona as Martine, who's kind of his fellow doctor. Jared Harris as Nicholas, who is this doctor who's been helping him his whole life, and then Matt Smith plays Milo, who is his best friend since childhood, who has the same condition as him. Uh, Look, guys, I'm not going to get into everything that happens, but if you've seen a movie, you kind of know what's going to happen. With me saying that, I did think Jared Leto, who's a very polarizing actor, especially for his off-camera antics and everything we hear about how he prepares for a role. I thought he was fine in this. He plays it very sort of earnest. He's just like, he's not like, doing a thing. And he's fine. Matt Smith is hamming it up, but I thought in a fun way. I thought Matt Smith was, kind of being like, I'll be that guy in this movie, going for it. What'd you think of these performances?
I totally feel I'm on the same wavelength as you there. Definitely. Jared Leto, fine. Yeah, I probably liked him more than I expected to, in terms of his performance. And yeah, Matt Smith was a lot of fun, really, on the whole. Yeah, I enjoyed him.
Yeah, no, I definitely, he's doing some dancing, he's doing some moving. He's
nice and camp. Thank you.
Right. There's nothing wrong with a little camp there. Overall, yeah, they with Venom, which Venom doesn't really like do it for me, those movies, but I get that like at its center has something so distinct with like what Tom Hardy's doing and what that dynamic is, and this one just lacks that. I think it doesn't have that. I don't know, like we'll see. I was overhearing people as we're walking out, most seem to be about the same as you and I, but a couple were saying they liked it, but I don't know if there's that thing to grab onto like Venom has. What do you think that there's like enough there for people with this movie?
Yeah, I mean, the one positive, I suppose for me was, I'm not going to spoil the ending, but throughout the film, the character of Martine Bancroft kind of didn't have a lot to do, but I liked her. I liked her as an actress. And I'm really quite intrigued. It left me wanting to know more about her in another film. So that was one kind of thing that had me wanting to come back for more.
Yeah, I mean, of course, we're recording this before the movie's open. We'll see how it does, and also if they give it more leniency because of the long delays. We'll see. Now, we're gonna end this review on a funny thing where I want to talk a tiny bit about sort of the Marvel of it all, and not get into spoilers, but get into some of the stuff from the trailers people have been talking about, and maybe almost stuff that is anti-spoilers because there are things not in the movie. But before we do that, if you're so adverse to that you want to step away, I understand. Let's say what we are rating this movie, Kim, out of 5 stars. What would you give Morbius?
Well, I would give it a 2 out of 5. Because, and that's for me, that's not awful. A 1 is obviously pretty dire, but it doesn't deserve that. There are positives in it. The performances are all fine. And those other things that I liked, like the bats and that cargo ship sequence, and perhaps what might happen going forward, make it deserving of a 2 for me.
I'm in the same arena. I'm giving it 2.5. It's funny, like I think about halfway through, I might have, if it had stayed about where it was halfway through, I might have been like a generous 3. But then the fact that last act, there was some, like, it's one of those movies that when it ends, you're like, oh, that's it. Like, you just decided it was time to end there. 2.5. It's fine as a diversion, I think, for most of it. It's got a couple of like visual kind of cool things. Performances are fine, and a couple are are pretty solid. But yeah, just not enough to grab onto there. So those are our overall thoughts. We're gonna do this one little extra part here, talking about the trailers and the Marvel stuff. So now's your out, if you're still here. Just to acknowledge the fact that people have been so wondering about like, what universe is this? And isn't it confusing that they're throwing so much in? And very notably that they cut a couple of big things that were in the trailers, like that Spider-Man Wanted poster and the Oscorp Tower. Did it feel to you like I felt like, as you mentioned, like they must have had some discussions because they made 2 other movies after this, Sony Marvel movies. I guess we need to change some stuff here.
Yeah, it suffers from it. I don't know what was obviously meant to be where within the film and why they ultimately cut some of this stuff. But if it made some of those moments that didn't make sense for me, if that was the reason behind it, then put it back in. Actually, no, I don't want them to put it back in. I'm not interested in seeing that version now.
Go for it.
But yeah, there was some Vulture stuff, wasn't there, that wasn't that wasn't in the film as well. So
Yeah, yeah. Michael Keaton has been in every single trailer for this movie, and he is in this movie. But that last trailer in particular leaned more into him, and I just felt like there has to have been some weird back and forth and discussions, and because we heard, I think he mentioned when he was on a talk show in December, I'm filming some Vulture stuff. So it's like they're adding stuff, they're taking stuff out. The fact that they were pushing him more in the trailer, yeah, like well, maybe one day we'll get more behind the scenes on all the switch ups that happened here. But
maybe,
it was,
maybe.
yeah,
I wonder
maybe.
how they're going to sort this messiness out that they've left at the end of the
film. Well, yeah, that's what they get paid the big bucks for. So we'll see. So the guys, we're being cagey here. You'll see the movie. We'll talk more about it in weeks to come. But thanks for sticking with us for this. We'll have plenty more on all things Marvel adaptations, but also all other entertainment here at Fandom. Take care.